antiheroes today. So last week we had a really riveting discussion on the hero trope. And today we're going to be looking at the other side of the spectrum in regards to antiheroes. So residential writing savant, Professor E, could you give the audience just a brief definition of what you would define a anti-hero trope as?
Sure. I mean, the easiest way to think about it is, what is an anti-hero? So like I said before in last week's episode, an anti-hero is basically a character who doesn't quite fall into the conventions of being a hero by using the orthodox methods to get the job done. They essentially do have morally gray fibers, but in and of themselves, they are not trying to do evil. They're going about trying to do what they think is best, but they're doing it in a wildly untraditional way, especially if you're considering them to be anywhere near the hero camp. The example that Otis mentioned is one of the tried and true ones, of course, is the Punisher, for example.
Yeah, I know that the rise of the anti-hero was a really big marking point in comics itself. From our interview with with Graham Nolan, our very first big interview, that was a big point of contention that he remembers when he was writing for Batman, and the reason they did the whole the run with Nightfall, I think is what it was called, where they had Azrael take over as Batman because everybody wanted an evil, vengeful version of Batman that had guns that committed murder, because Wolverine and the Punisher were so popular in DC Comics. So again, if you guys want to know more insight on that, go back and watch that interview. He gave a lot of insight into why he did that run and how he used that run in order to kind of trick fans back into wanting the status quo again.
Trick fans.
That's what I gathered from it. But to get into this conversation, Otis, you said you had a question that you wanted to ask in regards to this topic, right?
Yeah, I was going to save it for later, but I can get out the way now. So in terms of characters that fit into the anti-hero trope, do you guys think that Homelander from The Boys fits there? Because, I mean, technically in his mind, he is trying to do right, but clearly his decision-making is not not aligned with your typical hero. So what's your guys' opinion on that?
So for me, I think he was early on. When he was in his prime in Haiti in the 70s, he was just saving people. He wanted to genuinely save people, but he did have these selfish means of, like, he wanted to be loved by people. I think as time went on into kind of where we are at the current status quo of where that character is, he's more of a supremacist, like almost a Nazi in the sense of where, if you watch the end of Gen V, which I'll try not to spoil it too much because I know my friend Ethan here just watched it, he is very much so on the tip of heroes are the superior beings. Heroes are the ones that should be getting all the recognition and all of the power and access and all those good things. And he very much so, I feel like he looks at people more so as like pets or things that need to be protected versus wanting to actually save them from themselves or save them from an aspect of just being a hero. So at one point, yes, because again, from my definition, the way I look at the anti-hero is you're still doing good, but you're doing good through either A, going outside of the normal sociological structure of what is acceptable to do so, or two, you're doing it for selfish reasons. So if you're in like a revenge tour and you're also helping people at the same time, you're helping people, but you're probably helping them to get information on somebody you want to kill, or et cetera, et cetera.
Interesting. That's a very interesting question, Otis. So a couple of things about that. What you mentioned right there, Dev, the idea that a anti-hero is still doing good. It's just they're doing it their own way. It's funny because technically, I guess, in traditional storytelling, an anti-hero is almost meant to be kind of an anti-protagonist. Because if you're going by like the old school playwrights, as far as what they thought that any main character in and of themselves is the hero, regardless of what they're doing, they're the hero. And when the anti-hero originally started getting real buzz, as far as in the cultural populace, a lot of it was from TV with like shows like The Sopranos or Breaking Bad, or even in The Wire, where the drug dealers themselves, like Stringer Bell and whatnot, were like some of the more popular characters, right? And these are guys who are doing essentially bad things. They're just doing bad things, but because of our perspective, we're with them. We see them as the main character, and we see them as our entrance into this world. And because we like them, but because they're doing bad, we can't call them quote unquote heroes. So Homeland, the question with Homelander, I kind of think he might be an anti-hero because if you look at what he's trying to do, he's not going out robbing banks. He's not out there directly fighting what you call heroes as far as fighting the police. He himself is meant to be labeled as, he's definitely a main character, and he, in lots of ways, does propel the story forward as the way a protagonist would. And also he does do, as Charlie said, he does do things that sometimes do result in things being for the better for people. He's looking out for people on some level, regardless of his mindset. The people he's fighting directly are Butcher and the quote unquote the boys, who themselves aren't always the most morally righteous person. It's almost like anti-hero versus anti-hero, which anti-hero are you on the side of? So I kind of do see him more traditionally as an anti-hero. He's not the traditional villain. He's definitely not the traditional hero. So I do see him more as it's somewhat of an anti-hero in that, right? Yeah, good point. Mm-hmm. Which also, my question I was going to ask was, because of Batman so much, it was brought to my attention a little while ago by one of my old mentors. He's like, yeah, Batman isn't a hero either. He's an anti-hero. Mm-hmm. The reason that Robin exists and Nightwing exists is pretty much to point out the fact that in Batgirl 2 is to point out the fact that he is so effed up that he's not really a hero. He's much more of such a dark vigilante that he's basically an anti-hero himself. No, he doesn't kill. He doesn't kill. But he does a lot of things that are very much spit in the face of what actual true heroes or justice should do.
Yeah, just from the aspect of him saving people alone, that comes from the aspect of him wanting to, in a way, like make up for the fact that he wasn't able to protect his parents. And which is why I think that plays such a pivotal role and why you see it in every origin story of Batman from any movie. And I think that's like, again, part of the initial flawed nature of what I looked at as an anti-hero of you're doing good, but you're doing it for your selfish purposes, rather that you're gaining something monetarily, physically, or just you're emotionally satisfying yourself in some form or fashion.
So is that a requirement? Is that a prerequisite for being a hero? The reason you're doing the good has to be for righteous or altruistic reasons?
For me, at least, when I look at like the prototypical hero, again, I'm looking at characters like a Superman, like a Captain America, who they do these things just because they should, just because it's the right thing to do. And again, you can discuss that differently with like different versions of the characters, and because we all know comics have different writers that want to do different things with them. But at the status quo of who those characters are, they do things just for the betterment of people without really having or needing anything from that. Spider-Man being another example, like he's the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He's helping out the community just because it's the right thing to do, and he's a member of the community.
Fair. What about like heroes for hire? Would they count as anti-heroes at that point then?
They had to get paid. Cage.
Yeah, I would, especially for those two characters specifically. I haven't read, I'd lie if I say I've read every single thing they've been in and all their arcs. But from what I've read of those characters and seen in different media depictions, they definitely can get more on the darker side as far as doing things outside of conventional means to get the job done. Because at the end of the day, like with Heroes for Hire, you're hiring them to stop crime in your neighborhood. So they're probably going to kick some doors without warrants. They're going to mess up somebody's home or do whatever just to get the job done. And then at that point, they're also playing their own judge and jury because you're coming to me with a case or issue of crime in your neighborhood, and I have no proof if your story is the exact story, but I'm still going to go investigate and possibly knock somebody the fuck out just because, or excuse me, knock somebody to bleep out. I'll probably bleep that out later. Knock somebody out just because that report was given. Like I could come in there with a fake black eye and be like, Otis has been beating me and my family and stealing our money. And because Otis is 6'4" and from Chicago, no, I'm sorry, you
profiling your own friend.
They're gonna go bust them up. They're like, they may not just like outrun, give them the iron fist, but they're probably gonna rough them up a little bit to be like, hey, bro, we heard you was doing this and that or the third. Yeah, so that's how I look at that. Like
I mean, from that standpoint, if you go tell Superman the same thing for free, like you see his man bust through facilities with chemicals and people still running through it. Like you've seen him punch people through skyscrapers. Like,
and no offense, we all know Superman isn't the world's greatest detective. He doesn't have to be. So it's kind of he takes a few bits of information and goes off. That's his thing. We hope he's right. We hope he's in the right, because when he's in the wrong, things go horribly, horribly wrong. Injustice.
I mean, I've seen that as far as like him stopping natural disasters or stopping a building from falling. because he's not really like looking for approval at that point. But I've never seen him like shake somebody down because it's been reported that they were outside of Lex Luthor, because that's Lex and his ritual with that.
Lex be there living his life.
Again, that's what you doing? Again, can I take a break? Can I take a vacation without you trying to blow up Gotham? Not Gotham, but Metropolis.
Yeah, that's hilarious. The thing is, I guess there are. So here's the thing. Here's the thing. That's fair. Let's get into this. There are some things that are inherently good. Period. It doesn't matter how you slice it. What they call a save the cat moment. Like, say, for example, there's a kid getting to fall and die, and someone catches them. No matter who they are, they catch. If Darth Vader catches a kid falling out of a tree, you say that's a heroic act. Period. However, if you say, Darth Vader, catch that kid over there, he's like, I'm gonna catch that kid in case you pay me $100, and he waits there until you give him $100, then saves a kid. It does kind of make this a bit murkier. So I see what you're saying, and obviously, if Superman is on his own dime, pro bono, saving the world over and over again, sure, that is very heroic. Spider-Man is dead broke, going out of his way to lose jobs to save the world, sure, that's heroic. But if the heroes for hire, like, yo, you got to pay me give me some kind of compensation for me doing these gigs. But here's the thing, I have to ask you then, Dev, are you saying, and let's not get too political, please?
Okay.
Are you saying then that firemen?
I was going to go there.
Let's again. maybe we should end this right out. Maybe this right out.
Oh God.
But are you saying that? Are you saying that public servants are not heroic because they get paid for their time and efforts?
No, because again, my big thing was like them working within these social constructs of what's acceptable in that society, and within society, those people are necessary to operate and for it to function. You need firemen to put out fires. You need policemen to police and protect people and keep things safe at some point. And they have those jobs to survive. But the difference I think comes in is like when you're a superpowered individual, you don't need to do this thing to survive. You're doing this just because you have the ability to. I think therein lies a difference of, and even when you're looking at like police officers, a big part of my thing was like the approach. Depending on speaking at the best possible type of police officer, they're not just going to walk up to you on the street on the corner and rough you up and be like, hey, bro, we're here to selling drugs. They're going to approach you and be like, hey, what are you doing here? You know, you're not supposed to be here. Are you selling drugs? You know, that's illegal. We're going to have to take you in. And they're going to do things in the best possible way with the best. Again, this is hypothetically speaking with the best possible police officers. There may be some other individuals that let that anti-hero side come out and how they approach things, probably a good majority in some cases. But in theory, they shouldn't be. Right. They should wait to get all those details. Right. Yeah. They're functioning within what's socially acceptable within that society. Fair. Now, if this is a different place where, like, again, it's the wild, wild west where you can do whatever, that's a different story at that point. But because there are rules and policy in place to make sure that these things are structurally done and structurally sound, that's kind of where I give them the just due.
I got you. So part of it too, why people do cite Batman as a bit more of an anti-hero is because he's a noir detective. He literally is a noir detective, and noir detectives, I'm sure you all know this too, they're considered anti-heroes. They're not considered heroes because, like he's brought up there, Charlie, how they are literally hired to do a job, and the jobs they do are very morally gray. Like, I mean, if the woman in the red dress says, "I need you to go sneak up, look around at my husband. I think my husband's doing some stuff he shouldn't be doing." He goes stalking this woman's husband and taking pictures and everything. That's some very, very morally questionable stuff that they're doing. Mm-hmm. And they're the main character of the movie or the story. And Batman's kind of similar in that right. He's doing a lot of things he shouldn't be doing, breaking down doors and sneaking into places he shouldn't be, fighting cops, fist on fist. So it's I see where you're coming from. If you're hired to do things, or if you're doing things in an unscrupulous manner, yeah, it can be very,
I also preach the church of Uncle Ben when it comes to you having great power and needing great responsibility at that front. If you have all this excess ability and power to do good things, at that point, it's up to you. Are you going to be altruistic and do good things for the sake of helping people? Or are you going to charge a fee for it? Are you going to do it only when it seems right in your eyes? You know what I mean? Are you going to do it when it's convenient for you? Mm-hmm. Those are what I look at in regards to like an anti-hero. But again, I think when it comes to anti-heroes, the term, because there's so many different things that can make you an anti-hero, at least from my perspective, I think that's very broad, and that a lot of different characters kind of get thrown into the anti-hero sphere when they don't fit the perfect trope of a hero. It's like, you're not a perfect hero, or we're going to throw you into the anti-heroes little lens. And then if there's other subgenres of that I'm not aware of, sub tropes that I'm not aware of, those probably divvy up there. But I think the masses or majority of characters get thrown into the anti-hero sphere.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I mean, we've talked enough about the difference between the anti-heroes and the heroes. Where do you think the line is drawn between when an anti-hero and a villain? Because I mean, you have characters like Light Yagami from Death Note, where I mean,
that's just
where does he fall? Like, I mean,
does anyone even consider
in his mind, he's doing righteous work. He's trying to make the world better, but he's like, serial murdering hundreds of people at a time to do it. So,
right.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing about Light, I mean, too, I mean, I'm going to cut you off, Charlie, but real quick.
No, I ain't.
The thing about Light is he's knowingly killing innocent people to cover his own self, right? To cover himself. And when you are, even with all the perspective in the world, when you are consciously and consistently doing things that you yourself are aware are wrong, in and of themselves ethically wrong, there's no gray. Originally, yes, Light was using the book, the Death Note, to specifically and only target people that were criminals, right? But even on some level, when you're saying I get to play God and determine who gets to live and die, that's very morally gray, teetering on black right there. And then when you're saying, you know what, F it, I'm going to kill whoever I need to kill for my own purposes, there is no blurry line anymore. It's to the point where you actually had to introduce a hero to stop that person. That's how, Light was gone almost from the start.
Yeah, for me, I think the line when Mr. Yagami comes into what his intentions are. Yes, he is killing criminals and knowing that will help the crime rate of the world. And from what I remember, from what we watched the anime recently, it did. Like the crime rate in a lot of the parts of the world exponentially went down. But he did that with the intention of him being the god to rule the new world. So he did all that stuff from a selfish perspective of just wanting to be a god. He, at least from my memory from rewatching it recently, he didn't do any of those things with the thought process of saving innocent lives or just making the world better. It was break down the world so I can rule it. And I think that's where a villain comes into where partially big factor is, again, killing innocent people for selfish means, but also are you seeking to, again, like I said before, are you seeking to help people? Are you seeking to take control and power so you can control people? And from Light Yagami's perspective, I think he was just trying to be a god to rule a new world from the shadows.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it eventually became to that. Like, initially he wanted to just, create order. He criminals disgusted him. So like in his mind, they had to be purged. Like this way of life had to be changed. Mm-hmm. And he just thought that he was the only person that had the conviction to follow through with it. Mm-hmm. And then as he became essentially a god of death himself, he kind of got absorbed into it and I will be the god of this world. That's how I took it personally. But I mean, I definitely agree with you. For the people that somehow have convinced themselves that Light Yagami is not a villain,
they exist.
Oh, the worst one is Eren Yeager.
That's what I was about to say that. It's like he's just committing mass genocide. We had to get this point, but he's committing mass genocide.
I was.
Oh, my bad, bro. My bad. Go ahead.
Oh, damn.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Sorry about that. I mean, you still talk about it.
No, you're completely right. Like, I mean, Eren Yeager is a.
People defend him. People defend him. They said, no, it's team. It's what are you talking about? Team Yeager.
Yeah. Because my thing is, I can understand why you did something. Like, if it comes to somebody committing murder or like if you were in a drunken accident and you killed somebody in a car accident, I can understand why that happened. Like you were inebriated, you weren't in control of yourself. But I can also tell you that you are a horrible person for doing that, because at the end of the day, you hurt somebody, rather than in the worst possible way, rather than being willingly or unwillingly, you made the decision to do that. And when it comes to stuff like that, you can start somewhere, because to your point, as far as an anti-hero or a villain, we all love the aspect of characters not being static and them being dynamic. I think you can shift from being a hero to an anti-hero to a villain And I think you can find your way back. Somebody like Vegeta, I think like found his way back from being a villain to somewhat of an anti-hero of sorts, and he's teetered back and forth. He's probably still going to hell. Like he should still go to hell, no matter what, because of the genocide, which is nuts. Which is nuts. I'm like, he still blew up a planet. Billions of people are dead.
Planets actually.
That
was also his tail end of it. We saw it when it done.
Yeah, if I was aliens on that bug planet that he stopped at on the way to Earth, I'd be pissed if I'm in heaven. Like, why is he here?
It's like, you blew up my house. I can see my house over there.
My culture, my people don't exist anymore because of his
mass. It's worse than Frieza. Yeah, but I do. Yeah, you're right though. As far as it is fun to watch in stories where a character kind of goes on that scale. Vegeta's a great example of that. Zuko too. And Zuko doesn't slide back and forth, but Zuko does slide a little bit though, as far as the end of chapter 2, where he does go